Hello, everybody. It's me again, and we're going to continue with the previous video. All right. In the last video, what we talked about is that we talked about defining variables, putting some values in it, different type of variables. We talked about printing. We talked about arithmetic operations. We talked about addition, subtraction, multiplication. And then we talked about casting, how to change one variable type to another type. We talked about mod, which is the remainder. We talked about string manipulation, how to format a string, simple format, and how to concatenate the strings. In this video, I'm going to continue with this basic stuff, and probably this would be the last video that we use playground, and we'll dive into mobile app development just to get you exposed to it, and I think it'll be more interesting. If we have to explain topics that are complex, and then probably we'll use the playground just at the beginning, but we'll dive back into the app development. So what we're going to do in this video, I'm going to talk about more arithmetic operations, logical comparison, and optional variables. Let's start with the arithmetic operations. In this scenario, I'm going to show you the order of operation. Sometimes you have complex equation, and then these complex equations has addition, multiplication, subtractions, and divisions all together. So the computer need to understand, or you need to understand, what does the computer do first, perform first, so you avoid mistakes. So what happens is that in this case, I have a small example about temperature conversion, how you convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, and how to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay, and these are the equations. We'll use them in a minute. But let me explain to you first what is the order of operation. Now, if you have an equation like this case, what happens first? What happens first? First, the computer look at if you have any brackets. So do you have any brackets? Yes, I have brackets. So these are the brackets. So it will perform everything within these brackets, all right? When it's done, it looks for other brackets if you have other brackets, okay? In these equations, we don't have other brackets. We have only one set of brackets, okay? But let's say if I have brackets here, okay? What happens is that it does this bracket first, and then these brackets second, and then the last thing it does, these calculations, okay? But no need for these brackets. I'll explain to you why, okay? So that's the first thing happens. After that, it looks for these operations, if you have multiplication, division, or mod. And in this case, I have multiplication here, but here I have bracket and additions here, and addition. All right, I'll do another example here in a minute. And then the last thing it does after these, if it finds these, and usually it does them from left to right, we will have what we call these addition and subtractions. And the last thing happens is your assignment. So I define some variables. So go ahead and define some of these variables. A equal 4, B equal 10, and C equals 0. So if I say C equal A times 2 plus B times or divided by 2 and plus let's say Y or A times, you want to use plus 2, all right? Now, you wonder, here, let's do this here. You wonder, how did we get 19? All right. Well, in this scenario, what happens first, because I don't have any bracket, you see that? I don't have any brackets in here. So what does it do first? What it does first, it looks at this equation, this equation, and start looking, do you have any of these first? Well, I have this, and I have this, but I have plus and plus and plus. So what it does these two first. So the result of this would be 4 times 2, that would be 8. And then it does this. So this would be like, I'm just going to give you what would happen here. The result of this will be 8. And then the plus is not performed. It has to do this first, which is 10 divided by 2, which would be 5. And then plus, do you have any of addition, multiplication? Sorry, you have multiplication, division? No, so we have addition. So what is the value of A is 4, and then the last thing happens is 2. So now, if you look at add all these up, this is 11 plus 8, and that's how you get 19. Well, if you take the same equation and then do this, but now instead of doing this plus, let's put multiplication here. Now you get a different result. What happens here is that it takes this, multiplied by this, multiplied by this, and then by b, and then it divided all by 2. This is exactly like you would be doing this, okay? Because they all have the same level, okay? And they all have the same priority. So it does it from left to right, okay? And that can be confusing, so you need to be careful of that, all right? If you want to force it, let's do that again. If you want to force certain operation first, if you want to say, I want to do all of this first and then divide it, then you would have to put bracket in front of this, all right? Just to guarantee it. Now, within the equation, it does the multiplication first, and then the addition next, and then at the end, it divided by 2. So you get a different result, all right? And it goes the same with everything else. So for example, if you're doing here, for example, instead of this, if you're doing division, okay, and then you want to ensure that this has happened first, so it does this first, and then this is next. This is how you do it. You put brackets, you force the order of execution, all right? That, I'm not gonna talk too much about this, but it's important when you're doing calculations. Some people overlook this, but it's critical when you're doing arithmetic operations to understand how the computer handle complex equations. All right, and the best advice to you is that whenever you want to guarantee certain operations are executed first, make sure you include them in brackets, parentheses, brackets, all right? So how do we do this equation if we want to do this equation, all right? So you can define, we have already C, if we can define, let's say var F, and then we have C again, because there's going to be a problem here, so we'll say C1. Now here, we're going to use float or double, all right? Let's do double, and equal to 32. And then var C1, again, double, then equal 32, 0. Okay, for this equation, to convert from doable. All right, so from this equation, you can say, for example, you can say C1, because I already have C, you can say equal the temperature, 32, F minus 32, divided by, or multiplied by 5/9, and that's it. All right, because it is 32 minus 32, you got 0, multiplied by this, you'll get 0. So, but if you change the temperature to, let's say, 44, and then you hit, and then let the execution, and that's what you got, all right? 6 degrees. And you can do the same thing for the other one. Okay, so that is as far as arithmetic operation. Now, the next thing I'm gonna cover is that logical operation. What is logical operations, okay? Logical operations, sometimes you want to do some comparison. So for example, if you say, if the temperature, let's say the temperature that you just did, you want to compare it to see if the weather is nice, if it's too cold, or if it's too hot, to inform the user. Now, of course, they can feel it, but just for sake of explanation. So you can say, for example, if you can say, you can compare if the temperature, which is C1 right now, if it is greater than, for example, 10 or 25, then you can say the weather, it's warm, right? You can say print warm. The weather is warm. I'll just say it's warm. Okay. Well, what did I explain? I just introduced something here that if you're not familiar with programming, this is kind of different. But what are we doing here? Logical operations are things that you want to compare. Like if you studied algebra, you have things like you have greater than, you have less than, you have equal, you have less than or equal, you have greater than or equal, and then you have not equal. Well, if you've done any programming before, you should be familiar with these. Well, how do we use these operations? Like in that, just like you did in arithmetic operation, you have plus and minus and all of that. Well, you have things that for logical operation. So for example, you can say, how do you say greater than? Greater than, what the sign for greater than is this. The sign for less than is this. And the equal, now it's different. For the equal is actually double equal, not one equal. And this, people get confused with that. You have to be careful with this, okay? So maybe I should put them in the front instead of, okay, here. This is greater than, this is less than. And let me just delete this. And this is the equal. All right, and then you have less than or equal. How do you say less than or equal? Less than or equal, just like that. Greater than or equal, it's the same thing, greater than or equal. And not equal is explanation mark and not equal. All right, so if you want to compare two variables, or if you want to compare something to a value, so what do? You say if C1 greater than 25, then when this is called condition, and this condition comes with if statement. Like it has what we call syntax. A syntax is that like a language that rules that you need to adhere to. Every programming language has a syntax, and the Swift has the syntax. In the past, you used to put brackets in front of it. You could, okay, you could put parentheses in front of it to make sure that you have. Sometimes you want to make sure that some operations is performed first, or for simplicity, you don't have to put anything. Okay, so it says if this condition is true, I want to print this. Okay, now right now, that does not print. Now, sometimes with condition, you can say else, something else. So it checks this condition. If this condition is true, then do this. Otherwise, if it is not true, you do this. So you can say print, it's whether the weather is, it is not warm. It could be warm, but it could be cool, but it could be very cold, but we can just say it is not work for now, okay? And then we'll fix it later on, okay? So now I will print, it prints this. So it checks this condition. If this condition is true, and that's what we talked about Boolean before, you do this. Otherwise, what do? You do this part, all right? Okay, so what about if you want to have a particular, you want to check for a particular value. This is a range, greater than or less than, it's a range. But if you want to say equal to exactly, so you can say if C1 is equal to 25, and then you do this, otherwise you do that. And this would be true only when it's equal to 25, okay? So these are your conditions. Sometimes you want to say, like when we say if it's greater than, we say 25, and then you want to say, and I want it to be actually between 25 and let's say 30. So we say here we use another set of logical operations, which is the and, the or, and the not. And these and or are executed. For example, we say and C1 is less than 30. This is executed only if these two conditions are true. So I'm going to write them in here. So we have these are operations. Okay, these are those are comparison, but we have operations. We have the and condition. And then we have the or condition, which is this one. And then the last one is not. Now, what are these things, and or? And or, just like you use it in typical language, and an and condition means that this condition, we have two conditions here. And I'm going to put them in brackets so you can see them easily. You don't have to with Swift, but I'll put them in here so you understand what we're talking about here. So what happens is that when you have an and, you're checking two conditions, not one condition. It says, if this condition is true and this condition is true, execute this, all right? So the and only executes when two conditions are true. If the or condition, on the other hand, the or condition is saying, if one of these conditions is true, execute this, otherwise do this. Typically, when you're using ranges, you use and. When you're looking at outside boundaries, then you use or. So for example, if you can say this. You can say, if C1 is greater than 50 and C1 is less than, let's say, minus 10 or minus 0 or 0, the weather is horrible, is bad, and don't go outside. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that you're looking at if the temperature is greater than 50, which means not 50, let's say greater than 40, it means it's very hot, and or it is, but instead of or and here we want to use or. You say if the weather is very, very hot or the weather is cold, the weather is bad. I don't want to go outside. Okay. Otherwise, you can say, well, the weather is pleasant. Maybe. Depends on your preference. The weather is pleasant. Okay. All right. That is how you do the arithmetic, logical comparisons and operations, okay? So what these are called, there are another one is called bitwise logical operations like and or and not, but I don't think you need it for most cases for you guys. When you get to that level, then you're doing something different, and then you should be familiar with this anyway. All right. The not thing, sorry, I didn't talk about the not. The not, when you say it's for example, if not equal, we didn't use the not equal. We can say, for example, if A is not equal to, well, we have X and Y above. Or if you say if we have a message, remember we have a message. If we say message, if it's not equal, or let's use name since we defined name before, is not equal to Omar. Okay, what does that mean? That means if this value is not equal to Omar, so you're looking for a particular name, all right? And this is the not, all right? Invalid access, right? Invalid access. All right, you can do things like this. All right. That as far as the logical comparisons and operations. The last thing I want to cover in this video is the optional variables. What is an optional variable? For many of you starting fresh with Swift, or it's a weird concept if you haven't been in programming before. What is an optional variables? You can define a variable called optional variable. Let's say var whatever I call anything, z equal, okay, and then I'm going to make that string. All right. Well, if you try to print z right now, what does it print? It gives you an error. And the reason it says giving you error, it says, oh, you don't have any value in z. You defined it, but you didn't have any value in it, all right? Well, in the past with Xcode, apps used to crash, and then they crash for no reason, and then people wonder why is the application is crashing. Well, at the end of the day, these are memory locations. And if you don't have values in this memory location, they have nil. And when they have nil, when you're trying to print out nil, it actually crashes your application. Well, to avoid this, you have to, you can define variables as optional. And the way you define variables as optional, you put exclamation mark, okay? So now, when you put that exclamation mark question mark after it, it actually printed out nil because it knows that, okay, this is an optional value. An optional value, it can have a nil, and that's what you're getting, a nil, all right? So now in your code, you can check, does this have a value or not? And you can do this by saying things like this. You can say if z equal to nil, or does not equal to nil, you could do things like this. And now you can process it, okay? Print z, for example, okay? Else, if it's equal to nil, it means that I don't want to print nil to the user. I can print things like this, print no value present, okay? No value present. Okay, now instead of seeing the user seeing nil, you're actually seeing some value, something meaningful, all right? So that is how you do optional variable. And now sometimes you can use what we call unwrapping the value. Okay, what is an unwrapping the value? Unwrap the value is that because it's an optional, you need to unwrap it. Okay, so you'll see this a lot. You unwrap it. Now, the nice thing about Xcode, it helps you find these errors, and then when it finds these errors, you just click on the red button and say fix it, and it will fix it for you. So you don't need to worry too much about it. So, but if I do Z now, right now, if I say Z equal ABC, now it will print ABC. It will not give you this because it does have a value in it. Sometimes you'll see definition like this. It's already this is called unwrapped variable already. All right, so you're defining it and then you're unwrapping it at the same time. So what happens now, even if you do this, then you should be okay. All right, no value present. So you can unwrap the values by putting in exclamation mark. In this case, it didn't matter because when I defined it already unwrapped. All right. I'm not going to talk too much about optional variable because it does get confusing. And I think when you get to situations where you want to use it, start using it, it makes more sense. All right. All right. So this is bring us to the end of the last. This video related to the playground. The next video, I'll show you how to actually start creating apps. Talk about Xcode and the nice things that exist in Xcode. And we'll start developing apps. Here in this video, just to summarize what we've done, we talked about the arithmetic operations, we talked about logical comparisons, we talked about optional variables. Here we talked about the order of operations, whether it is X, Y, what happens first when you have complex equations, what is executed first, and what is the expected result. We talked about when you're comparing two things, when I introduced you to the if statement briefly. If statement is like the conditions, you have greater than. In any programming languages, you have these. And then you have the compound conditions where you have and or. And what does and mean, what is or mean, and what does not mean. All right. We're done, and I'll hope to see you in the next video. As I said, in the next video, I'll show you how to start creating apps, and the first one will be talking about Xcode in general, and then we'll create a small app. All right, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.